What is up, Bat Family? Welcome back to a brand new video on The Batman, but not the Batman you may be thinking about with Matt Reeves. Today's video, at least, I thought it'd be really cool for me to go over the new details that Joe Manganiello, sorry, I always butcher his name, gave us about the scrapped Batman project. And I just thought it'd be fun to cover the details. Some of you may already know about this, but definitely pay attention for those of you who have not read this or know a single detail about it. Then, after reading some bits, I'm going to give my feedback, my thoughts. Would I have liked to have seen this movie? Where do I think they would have gone with it? There's just a whole bunch of fun in this overall, so let's get started with this. This originated, I believe, from Yahoo, who spoke to Joe about his upcoming movie, and then he really got into the nit and grit of the scrapped project, which now eventually came to be Matt Reeves' The Batman, which went down a whole individual route. Okay, so let's dive into this. So while speaking with Yahoo Entertainment about his new film, Arch Enemy, which opens in theaters as well as on digital and VOD services on December 11th, the True Blood star reveals that Affleck's abandoned Batman adventure would have had a strong David Fincher vibe. He goes on to say there were similarities to the game, referring to Fincher's 1997 cult favorite that starred Michael Douglas as a rich banker who loses everything overnight and then runs a dangerous gauntlet orchestrated by a shadowy organization. So in the original pitch for The Batman, Deathstroke performed a similar demolition job on Bruce Wayne's life, systematically destroying his public status as Gotham City's leading citizen and his private existence as its caped crusader. It was a really dark story in which Deathstroke was like a shark or a horror movie villain that was dismantling Bruce's life from the inside out. It was this systemic thing. He killed everyone close to Bruce and destroyed his life to try and make him suffer because he felt that Bruce was responsible for something that happened to him. Now, honestly, that sounds really interesting, and I feel like it would have been quite as successful. I mean, obviously, if written quite well, you know, shot very well, I'm sure they would have obviously tried their best, but just in raw concept, on paper, Deathstroke dismantling Bruce's public life as Bruce Wayne to Gotham, but not only Bruce Wayne, Batman. It sounds like, such as Joe Manganiello says, God, I'm going to choke on that word, a very dark film. As I said kind of earlier, even though I said Justice League, like a post-BVS Batman who didn't brand Lex Luthor on his skin, like he definitely changed after those events. But then he would have been brought into his own movie where from where we had a Batman who had no problem kind of killing people, and where he'd kind of given up, didn't really care so much about the no killing rule. He wouldn't outright snap someone's neck, so to speak, but if you've seen BVS, you know exactly what I'm on about. He overcame that, I think we can assume safely. He had that restored hope thanks to Superman, but now he would have been dragged into a situation where Deathstroke, imagine someone of Deathstroke's caliber, Slade Wilson, dismantling, and as he said himself, killing everyone, as it says here, word for word, close to Bruce. This would make Batman snap more than whatever made him snap leading up to BVS. You know, with the whole 20 years in Gotham, Alfred, how many good guys are left? How many stayed that way? Yeah, sure, there was a lot more that led up to the Batman that we saw in BVS. He had lost Robin. It was Dick Grayson instead of Jason Todd. Like, it was very interesting, but what I'm trying to articulate here is that we would have had a Batman who had improved thanks to Superman, gone back to his kind of prime philosophy, and then he would have been driven to the brink again by Slade Wilson. And I do wonder if Batman, a big part of the movie would have been about Batman refraining from snapping. How can I put this? I guess just going back to the BVS way of things before he came out the other side. That hardcore Batman who didn't really give a F. If you're in a car chasing his Batmobile, he'll fire a load of bullets, blow up your gas tank, and you'll die in that as well. It may not be an outright execution, but he will kill you if you get in his way. And to be honest, I can't imagine a Ben Affleck Batman, even after the events where he came out of BVS the other end and he kind of got his, I suppose we can say he kind of got his no-kill rule back. I can't imagine he would treat people in the same way after BVS and then Justice League and stuff. Well, let's just analyze that again. It was this systemic thing. He killed everyone close to Bruce. One thing that I have to ponder here. did Alfred die? Because there is only one situation, and I am a purist kind of person in terms of I don't like Batman killing. I'm on that side of the fence. I can appreciate Snyder's Batman in so many ways, but I fundamentally disagree with that side of it. I get the angle, but it's not the character. No matter what anyone says, that's not the way I see that character, and neither do a lot of people. It's not really an unpopular opinion at this point, but fair enough if you do like that, and you understand the psychology that led to Bruce being at that point. However, there is always one situation where, if, as described in this way, if Alfred Pennyworth got murdered right in front of Ben Affleck's Bruce Wayne, I wouldn't care in the slightest if that drove Batman past his no-killing rule. It takes something fundamental like that, I think, for that character to be pushed at that edge. So I feel like in BVS, you know, even though he'd been going through quite a lot, I feel like fair enough if Alfred got murdered in front of his eyes by Superman or something, or in this case, Deathstroke. He would want that absolute vengeance, right? So I think it is safe to assume that maybe Deathstroke does kill the Jeremy Irons Alfred Pennyworth, and that could be an explosive catalyst that starts the movie off for Bruce Wayne in terms of the dismantling of his life by Deathstroke, and then the rest of the movie is just about him really trying to deal with this Deathstroke problem. I'm really fascinated by this, and what fascinates me about my own fascination here is that I'm not a huge Batfleck person. I do like Batfleck. There are several reasons. If you've been watching my videos for long enough, you'll know that I'm much more on board with Matt Reeves' vision for the Batman and just Batman as a character. But I can't help but feel enthralled by this whole concept. And another part of that is Joe's Deathstroke, because I feel like he would have capitalized on that character so hard, because it really does reach into his acting roots, I feel, and I know we haven't seen him have a whole chance to portray that, and to be fair, there was something off about that Justice League post-credit scene that we did get, and more on that in just a second, because he clarifies a lot onto that in terms of what the original one was and how that was supposed to set up this Batman movie that we're talking about right now. But yeah, like, I loved that Deathstroke suit. I thought he looked great, but there was something off about the hair, and I didn't really like the mohawk when it was revealed, but you know what? I prefer that much more over the Joss Whedon Deathstroke that we got. I kind of like what Joe Manganiello had to say about the reason why he has the mohawk, and that's what he brought to the character within the Snyder Cut, because, you know, just in case you didn't know, he was brought back once again to wear the armor, never say never kind of thing. But man, that beast trying to take out Batman, and not only just take him out, because to take him out would be way too simple for Slade. He wants to dismantle. Oh man, what a dark Batman movie that would have been. You have to think one of the beginning catalysts for it would have been Alfred's death. And can you imagine Alfred being murdered? I mean, this isn't just Alfred, because he said everyone close to Bruce dies. That is dark, like dark beyond belief. Like, I feel like you can't make follow-up Batman films, even when this Deathstroke moment had been overcome by Batman in this movie, because there's not really anyone left. I mean, sure, he would have got past it, but I can't imagine. I feel like this is a one-shot. You know, like a one-shot comic, this is a one-shot movie. But one thing I am fascinated by, as I kept saying earlier, is would he have maintained the philosophy that he got back into? So what I'm saying there is, at the end of BVS, he was a lot more of a better Batman, kind of went back to his normal philosophy of, you would have to think, no killing. You would have to have thought this would have put him right over the edge again. I don't know, it's hard to think about. But anyway, there are more comments saying, besides the game, Affleck's proposed storyline also bears strong similarities to Born Again, a classic arc from Frank Miller's run on Marvel's Daredevil comic book that was loosely adapted to the screen in the 3rd season of the Netflix series. It was really cool, really dark, and really hard, Manganiello says wistfully. I was very excited for it. So was Snyder, who teased the Batman in the original version of a post-credit scene that appears at the end of Justice League, where Deathstroke pays a visit to Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. Now, as we all know, we saw that, and it was kind of setting up their own league, like the Injustice League or the Legion of Doom. But in the original sequence, that Manganiello shot with Snyder during principal photography in 2016, the dastardly duo discussed what to do about Batman, thus setting the gears of Slade's master plan in motion. But when Affleck stepped away from directing The Batman the following January, and Joss Whedon replaced Snyder as Justice League's director a few months after that, the actor assumed that the scene was a goner and put Slade in his rear view. And that's just one side comment I want to say on all of this. Joe Manganiello has been through such a biatch of a ride. It's like he's like a video game character who's been selected, deselected, selected, deselected. You know, like everyone else is the puppet master and he's just being effed around with. And no wonder he put it in his rear view. Imagine being an actor as big of a comic book fan as Joe is. Like, if you didn't know about that, he's a huge comic buff. And imagine knowing you are gonna fulfill and hopefully personify and become the definitive Deathstroke for millions of kids and adults, fans out there, and you just get effed over by all this BS that happened. Like with the sentences that I just read out, everything was like a domino effect after all of that went down. How the original Snyder Cut went down, how his role went down with that when Joss Whedon took over because of the reshoots. The Batman movie then just flew off into the distance, and that became its own thing, which I'm low-key grateful for because it's going to be a much better Batman vision in my mind. But let's just, you know, conclude my thoughts on just this Batman premise in general, with Slade dismantling his life because of something that he believed that Bruce was responsible for something in terms of what happened to him. Now, it would be very interesting if they somehow worked Bruce Wayne into Slade's origin in terms of how he was experimented upon in terms of becoming Deathstroke. Maybe that had something to do with Wayne Enterprises, and somehow Slade finds out the link of Bruce in terms of his involvement in that, but I don't feel like that's nearly a good enough motivation. Maybe they would factor it into the death of one of his children, because that's a big thing in the comics as well, and at the end of the day, this would be an adaptation. Things are done, you know, as I always say, very differently when adapting things. It's not always copy and paste from comic books, so maybe there's something that Wayne Enterprises did or Bruce signed off in the past couple of decades, since this is a veteran Batman, don't forget, where Slade is just wanting absolute vengeance himself because he feels like Bruce had this impact on his life, so he's going to completely undo Bruce's life. Which kind of makes me feel like it's more maybe to do with the origin of Slade. Just because Slade is the person he is today, and even though he might be going out, taking jobs, this, that, and the other, it doesn't mean that he doesn't hate what his life has become, and he wants to blame someone for that, and maybe that's Bruce, and that's why he wants to unravel his life as well. Another super interesting thing to consider is if he's not only unraveling Bruce Wayne's private life in terms of the Batman, but also Bruce Wayne as the public persona, then he obviously knows who Bruce Wayne is, and maybe he leaks his identity to the whole of Gotham. Like, you would have to think that would have been in the cards if he's doing all of this in Bruce's life anyway, and killing everyone close to him. It's just insane. That's why I can't imagine this going beyond a single movie. Man, it would just be such raw emotion. I feel like Ben Affleck's acting chops would really come through there. And as for the resolution of the movie, obviously without knowing the plot, I can't guess how anything would resolve, but we've got enough of an idea to know that he's destroyed Bruce's life and Batman's life, right? So how could this resolve? You would have to think that Batman claps back just as hard as Joe, or should I say Deathstroke, claps him, to the point where they're almost wrecking each other in terms of existence, their energy, their everything is just boiled down to absolute wreckage for both of them. And I don't know how that would resolve ultimately. I think it would have to be along the lines of what I'm thinking, and I really can't imagine a reconciliation, especially after what Deathstroke would have already done to Bruce at that point, like killed multiple people, possibly even Alfred, amongst the unfathomable things that we can't even imagine that they would have put into the movie. So yeah, it just seems like a really dark, depressing Batman movie, which maybe some people wouldn't be up for, but it definitely is a very accurate color stroke of what a Batman movie could be. Now, Matt Reeves is going with a different vision. We're definitely going to get into the psychology of Bruce Wayne in a very Batman ego graphic novel way. There's a billion things that you guys know I can articulate about that vision, but this vision as well is completely just as accurate for a Batman story, and one that was really suited and kind of ripe for Ben Affleck's age of the Bruce Wayne he was portraying. I feel like that was, I don't know, it's just, it's nice and refreshing to be be so invigorated by the premise of Ben Affleck's Batman story when I thought I wouldn't really care that much again about hearing about it. But then you get teased with a what could have been, and it's like, damn. Like, we can't forget, at this point in the movie, or in Batman's life, but in the movie overall, he's been systemically destroyed through his public status, been exposed for something, probably his identity as Batman, which, even if people are grateful for Batman, the way it's been portrayed in BVS and everything, he's more of still a mythic figure. Especially think of that police scene where how terrified they are of him. So when that's linked to Bruce, you have to think all the citizens are like, WTF. That would have been mad, and I don't know how they would have resolved that. It's like almost there is no resolving it, but you have to think Deathstroke would somehow broadcast that. And then not only that, he kills everyone close to him, so you have to include Alfred in that. Like, the assumption with the line of he killed everyone close to Bruce, I don't think we would have ever have seen such a psychological approach to what makes Bruce Wayne, or more accurately, the real identity of Batman and Bruce Wayne being the mask. And what do you do when that's all stripped away? And I just love this concept. Breaking Batman down to his molecular frickin' structure of what makes him him. So, enough rambling from me, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think of this premise? Obviously, I can't figure out the whole plot just with my brain and reading what you had to say to Yahoo. Would you have wanted to see this, or are you more glad that we've got a rebooted Batman now in terms of Matt Reeves' Batman? If you enjoyed this video, please like it. I would really appreciate that. Subscribe for more kind of nerdy videos like this, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat Family, in the next video. Goodbye.